Have you ever played a game that can be so fun in one game and then turn into the worst nightmare in the next? But despite this emotional turmoil, like a crack addict, you just gotta get another hit. If you've played games such as League of Legends or Overwatch, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I've spent about 90 hours in Marvel Rivals since the beta test opened up about 1.5 weeks ago, in which time I solo queued to top 500 and even got into the top 100 at one point, but oh man, it was not pretty, it was not enjoyable, but was it rewarding? Kinda, but enough about me and my solo queuing. Let's go over all of the good and the bad about Marvel Rivals and decide whether it actually is good or if it's bad. Starting off with the good, we have Jeff. Just look at him, so cute, so adorable. He can eat people and spit them out. What else do you want? Oh, we gotta make the video longer? Okay, alright, let's just keep going. I can't give the feel and the look of the game enough credit. The half comic, half simple shaded art style looks really good and is definitely befitting of a Marvel hero shooter. It really is the best of both worlds, since the art style allows for the Marvel feel to shine through and stay true to its characters, while at the same time having a simpler art style makes it so much easier to read what's going on in the middle of any hectic team fight. Now, readability can use some work, but we're gonna get to that when we cover the bad later in the video. Building off of the art style, sort of another point I'd like to make is that Marvel really may have struck gold with creating a hero-style game that pulls from its very extensive, already existing intellectual property. Other games have to build their entire universes from scratch, which takes a long time, and they don't really get it quite right every single time, but Marvel can and have seamlessly bring their characters to life through the game, and they can pull from countless of comics, from their shows, from their movies, to flesh out every single character, which gives them so much depth in every single way. Every character has so many quips and they interact with each other as you're playing, and at least in my opinion, I want to say that they stay true to their characters, and it is interesting to hear what they have to say. Thanks to this IP, they can keep adding more and more characters to the game as they see fit as well. I mean, a large part of bringing new characters into a game is making the character, and that work is already cut out for NetEase, the developers. All they need to do is think of a playstyle kit that fits, and then they're golden. I mean, just a week or so into the closed beta test, they've already added Thor and Jeff, and we all love Jeff. Thor is okay, I guess. As for how the game plays, other than the occasional snags with getting stuck on a small rock or ledge, or when trying to use any grapple abilities, it feels absolutely great. Shooting feels so good, hitting shots feels satisfying, and hitting headshots even more so. The sound effects and a little icon that shows up whenever you do get a kill or knockout, we gotta keep it PG, right, are small details, but they do some very heavy carrying when it comes to the overall feel of the game. Hey, hexa kill! And for me, shooting is the most important part of any first-person shooter. It is in the name. And now, obviously, this is a third-person shooter, but it's very important for me nonetheless. And when I'm telling you shooting feels good, it feels good. I have seen some complaints that it feels like you aren't dealing that much damage, but I feel like the damage feedback on its own is good, and if you do hit your shots, you can definitely feel it. Enemies are pretty tanky, especially when compared to some other games like Overwatch, especially if your target is getting a lot of heals and support. So the fights can get very drawn out, but once you start focus firing the right enemies, they start dying pretty fast. Most of the abilities in the game are also pretty fun to use. At the time of this video, there are 23 characters in the game with mostly unique kits and tons of abilities each, not to mention the team-up abilities that are unique abilities that you only get if you have specific characters on your team at the same time. So if you have a Magneto, you won't actually have this overpowered sword slashing ability unless you also have a Scarlet Witch on your team. If anything, it is a bit hard to get into the game initially because of the sheer amount of abilities and homework that you need to cram ahead of time, but thankfully NetEase Games, the developers, have a massive compendium going in depth with every ability for every character, plus a pretty extensive firing range off rip, which lets you read up on everything and even try the abilities out in a safe environment yourself. That being said, some details in the compendium do seem to be missing, so I hope that they do flesh it out by the time the game does go for full release, and if not, that's also fine. They'll give us content creators something to do. I mentioned it before, but the team-up system needs some praise on its own, since since by adding specific abilities that only work when you combine some heroes on your roster, there will be an additional layer to building a team composition, as well as, understanding how a game will play out and what needs changing. It takes a long time until you really start grasping just how much you can do with the different compositions, and I'm not sure whether we're going to figure out the real optimal #1 meta by the time that the beta test has finished. The game also features some map destruction. You heard me, map destruction. That is one of the many things that they bring to the table that their main competitor, that being Overwatch, doesn't. Every map has several sections that are partially or even fully destructible. You can either blow a small hole into them or completely demolish certain areas to change the course of a fight. Since not everything is destructible, NetEase thought ahead and added a nifty scan ability which lets the user easily figure out what can be destroyed and what can't. But overall, the fights kind of flow weird at the moment. They're slow, they're very drawn out and scrappy, but I'd say it comes down to most players not knowing how the game really works, not focusing the right targets, just shooting the tanks, not the supports or DPS. But we're gonna have to wait and see until later on whether some tuning is needed. The game does feel pretty balanced overall, and other than some particularly odd choices, like the Hulk, I would say that you can play basically any hero and still have fun and an impact to the success of the game. I mean, assuming you got all the roles covered and you actually know what you're doing. Something else that Marvel Rivals does differently is that you actually get to keep your ultimate percentage between rounds in the King of the Hill mode. This was a massive surprise to me, and I'm not sure what I think about it. On one hand, this allows the dominant team to hold onto their ultimates throughout the rounds and snowball harder, so you can enter the second round in a best of 3 with a massive advantage of being your ultimates. But on the other hand, it allows the losing team to hold onto their ultimates as well and decide to use them for an edge for the next round, instead of using it on a fight that they are guaranteed to lose. Outside of the game, there's tons of esports support from the developers, or maybe the publishers, I'm not entirely sure. But honestly, I have no idea, but I'm all for it, with a $15,000 tournament during the beta, following a previous $25,000 tournament that they held in the alpha. It's clear that NetEase and Marvel are aiming to dethrone Overwatch, both as a hero shooter as well as an esport. In addition to that, going off the menus, there seems to be in-game tournaments planned as well, though I don't know enough about them at the moment to give it any real opinion or thought. In the ranked system, which I will have complaints about later in the video, so don't worry, there is one feature that I really like which I want to bring attention to, which is that once you hit Diamond and above, both teams will get one hero ban each. And as far as I know, this is unprecedented for hero shooters, but it's a very welcome change. Hopefully, this will avoid stale metas built around one really overpowered character at the top level, but we're gonna have to wait and see. But that's most of the good, so let's go over all of the bad. I'm gonna start the bad off with a few gripes that I would expect to be solved by the full release of the game, but I still want to bring attention to them because they definitely affect my experience and enjoyment of the game, and assuming it hasn't been fixed by the time the game is finished, it's something that I would like to hold the devs accountable for. So obviously I want to mention that the optimization is incredibly weak at the moment. I am aware that it is a beta, but the game is made in Unreal Engine 5, which does mean that there might be some performance issues down the line. I'm running on an AMD 7800 X3D and a 4090, and I can't even hold 140, let alone 240 frames stable in a 2K resolution. I can't even imagine how poorly the game runs on a lower spec PC. In addition to that, the entire beta, there's been issues of enemies teleporting while they're moving. The faster they move, the more apparent the teleporting is. I mean, good luck trying to catch an enemy, Spider-Man or Venom, zooming across the sky when you can only see them at 1 frame a second. I'm not sure whether this is a bug, something wrong with the netcode, or a stylistic choice, but it's definitely been annoying the hell out of me and definitely has been costing me a lot of lives and made me miss a lot of shots that I would have hit otherwise. The UI design is really cool at times, but there's a lot of places where it really falls short. In general, you can draw a lot of comparisons between Overwatch's and Marvel Rivals UI, but the Marvel Rivals UI feels a little bit more out of the way and for some reason more easy to miss. Everything is small, it's confined all the way towards the edges of the screen, and maybe it's a skill issue, but it's very easy to miss critical information like the point progress or even overtime at a glance or through your peripheral vision. In addition to the visual clutter, this also makes it very hard to keep track of how much you have left in your magazine. With some heroes, it's self-explanatory because you're using a weapon and it has to run out eventually, right? With others such as Hela or Luna Snow, it's hard to keep track of the ammo count with so much else going on, and without clear visual or or even audio cues, it's really easy to lose it. Speaking of losing things due to the UI, the only way to tell the difference between a friendly and an enemy player is a thin, faint reddish border surrounding them. It's not enough at all, which makes it hard to tell whether it is a friend or foe at a first glance, not to mention when 12 players are fighting in one spot at the same time. On top of that, while it is good that there are different voice lines for ultimates to make it easier to discern whether they're from a friendly or enemy hero, there's not enough of a difference in the way that they sound to actually help the new player know whether a teammate used their ultimate or if an enemy did until it's way too late. Overwatch does this very well, where you can very clearly hear the difference between a friendly ultimate and an enemy one, but for some reason, Marvel Rivals falls short. Speaking of sounds, when you take damage, I think all abilities and shots sound exactly the same. It's near impossible to discern what or who you're taking damage from, or even how much damage that you're taking. And when you combine all of this, it makes it very difficult to rely on sound in the game most of the time. Not to mention that enemy ultimates, for some reason, currently only play at one sound cue at a time, and if two ultimates overlap, the sound of one, the latter one, will just not play. And this is a huge complaint because Overwatch has amazingly good sound design, where you can basically play the game with your eyes closed and stay in the loop. If Marvel Rivals can't nail the sound design down, I have a hard time seeing how it can beat Overwatch. The audio cues for objectives are also unclear, even misleading in some cases. Where King of the Hill point is being captured, it sounds the same whether an enemy is capturing it or an ally is, and when points are being captured, especially for the last bits of a capture, the sound cues have this sound effect as if they're filling up, but the sound cue is a bit off, so it feels like you have more time than you actually do. It sounds like this sound effect is filling up, and then all of a sudden the point is capturing, even though it shouldn't be. It's really weird. And you can probably get used to all of these things, but when you are a new player, it is brutal. I mean, combine all of this information you need to learn about how all the heroes work, about how the maps are designed, and now all of a sudden, even small things that you should be understanding intuitively, like sound, cannot be relied on. And honestly, I'm 90 hours in and I still catch myself making crucial misreads that cost us the game just because I don't know how much ammo I have, or I misread how much time is left on the point through audio cues or even at a glance. And also maybe a nitpick, but while the hero select wheel looks cool, it gets really tedious to use after some time. I'd prefer if I could select whatever I want to play that much more easier, rather than having to scroll down the wheel to eventually get to the hero that I want. There's already 23 heroes in the game. Imagine 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line, when it's 30, 40, 50, you're gonna have to scroll quite a while. Also, for the love of God, stop interrupting whatever I'm doing with a loading screen. Whenever I try to type something, I get hit with a loading screen. Whenever I'm trying to look at the missions, when I'm trying to get in game, I'm forced to look at a loading screen. There has to be a better way to do this. These are all kind of nitpicks or UI related things. What about the game itself? As for the game itself, while I do like the additional depth of the team up abilities, at the moment they are weirdly balanced to say the least. Some team ups are so good that they're practically a must-have, which means that one person in the team needs to flex to a sometimes less fun or subpar pick just to give their team a chance to win by enabling somebody else on the team rather than themselves. One example is one I made previously of picking a Scarlet Witch to unlock Magneto's insanely strong sword ability that can single-handedly wipe teams. But this means that you have to play Scarlet Witch that doesn't really have that much of a damage output, and she doesn't, in my opinion, she's not as fun to play. In comparison, any Hela team-up abilities where she can just bring a teammate back to life if she lands a kill as they're dead seems very situational, and while it is amazing when it does work, most of the time it just doesn't. And when compared to the Magneto Scarlet Witch team up, it's really night and day. But of course, seeing as Thor and Jeff that were added this patch did feature more team ups, this makes me hopeful that we'll see a much wider and much deeper level of team ups come the game's full release. But I do want to say that overall the gameplay loop feels good, it feels refreshing, and it is enjoyable. Other than these nitpicks I had previously, I don't have too many complaints about the gameplay loop itself, but I do still have things to complain about. For example, one thing that really bothers me is the solo queue experience, or I guess the ranked experience as a whole, and that's something that's outside of the game design or the characters' weapons or even the audio. I'm not sure whether the matchmaking is bad or not, and honestly it's too early to say since we are in a beta with a limited amount of slots, but what I can say is that playing ranked is a frustrating experience for two main reasons. The first is probably obvious: there's no role queue. Because of this, almost everyone in my games immediately locks a DPS role, and it is for a good reason, or rather I can see why they do so, and that's because a lot of DPS DPS players are really bad at the game and they do not deal nearly enough damage to deserve to play that role in their very rank. Good players that actually want to win, who might have been the stronger DPSs on the team, are forced to supportive tanks or support roles, which will inevitably lead to a loss due to the lack of damage, or the DPS being carried by the skin of their teeth, which to them means that, oh yeah, I'm actually good, look, I just won as a DPS, and then they'll just insta-lock in the next game, and the next game, and the next game, over and over and over again. It's a negative spiral. The players that flex or play other roles eventually get tired of this and force DPS themselves, leading to tons of games that are lost off the rip because the team composition consists of 4 or even 6 DPS without supports or tanks or even both. This whole situation makes the game a breeding ground for toxicity.
Big boy, come on! Talk to me, stupid bitch. Bro's 11 dead, and you're fucking talking.
Give me the card. Give me the card, sir. Give me that card.
Kill yourself. Kill yourself.
Spawn, give me that fucking card.
Kill yourself.
So brain dead.
Kill yourself.
The reason I'm dying is
Kill yourself. 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 Kill yourself.
And as these huge egos don't want to swap off of the DPS, and they get their feelings hurt if they're underperforming and are asked to switch, even if it's a friendly request. There's infighting within the team in almost every game, and even though there is such a heavy censorship in what you can and you cannot say, you can't say poop, you can't say fart even, that's too much. Actually, as I am editing this and I wanted to get assistive b-roll, it turns out you can actually say poop and fart. However, most curses and even some abbreviations are actually censored, which is really annoying. But you can't say poop and fart, so it is in 1984 just yet. It doesn't help that Marvel Rivals doesn't have any avoid player features either, so there's a huge risk that you match with the same person on your team in the following games. And when you combine these two, it makes the solo queue experience even worse, since a pre-made stack will already have a few roles sorted, and you're more likely to have a well-rounded team off the rip. You also have fewer slots that can be taken up by a bottom-feeding toxic insta-lock DPS player, not to mention any pre-existing synergy that you bring into the match before even starting it. If anything does do the game in, I'm gonna have to say it's going to be the community, and it's not necessarily NetEase's fault, since the community has been growing increasingly toxic and selfish for years and years. We're just perpetuating the cycle, but at the very least, they need to implement some type of role queue and maybe some type of avoid feature to make dealing with the competitive side of the game more bearable. Honestly, I've been playing more quick matches once I got my top 500, but I do get time to play, and it's just so much more relaxing. It's just so much more enjoyable than caring about the outcome of a game, but still having it be a guaranteed loss before we've even selected all of our heroes. I also want to mention a worrying trend when it comes to somebody who's calling the shots for the game on a macro or on a very large scale, specifically regarding how the early access to the game has been handled. For the alpha, if you were a creator and you wanted to create content or cover the game early on, in the contract there was an anti-disparagement clause which limited anyone participating in the alpha from creating any negative reviews of the game. Now, after community outrage, they actually walked this back, but it's worth noting that they did try it at one point, which is not good. And with the closed beta, we have a botched Twitch drop with a limited set of keys dropping on a whole different website than Twitch once a day. And if you're European or non-American, it drops in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. Central European time. Most of the people who do stay up or stay on for these inconvenient hours don't even get keys, sometimes as often as several nights in a row. And a lot of people still haven't even gotten a key over a week later, and the beta is about to finish due to several technical issues, on top of a way higher demand to participate in the closed beta than the supply of the keys can actually meet. I mean, I made a Discord channel where I wanted the people to give away their keys and share them, because you get one key to give away at level 6, but it turns out that the key that you get once you hit level 6, you can give it away to any friend or whatever, also only drops at 2 a.m. So that from the same exact pool of keys as the Twitch drops. So these immediately got a market value, and everyone's just trying to sell their key for a little bit of extra money, going completely against the point of the Discord channel. And obviously I don't want to condone going to the Discord channel, just go to a legit trusted third-party key website, I guess. But it's incredible to me that this whole situation could have been prevented if there were just more keys available. I'm pretty sure that almost all of the keys are going to scalpers rather than legit players. And this obviously shows that there is a very high interest in the game, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a lot of attention when it does get released, but it is worrisome that whoever calls the shots at Marvel or NetEase or whoever it is keep finding ways to make the most greedy decisions as possible at the expense of the players. I hope that this does improve for the release of the game, or there might be enough backlash to put an otherwise great product in the ground before it even gets started. But as for my verdict, Marvel Rival is very polished and overall a good game, but it still has a long way to go with its sound design and when it comes to matching players together in order for everyone to have a positive and fun experience. It is far from a solo queue game, and it is very much plagued by the same toxic community that stamps both League of Legends and Overwatch. At its current state, I cannot give it more than a 7 out of 10 from myself, and that's heavily weighed by the fact that the solo queue experience and overall matchmaking experience is horrible. If this improved, like with a role queue and or avoid features, I can certainly see the game becoming an 8 or even a 9. I could even see it becoming a 10, but it still has quite a ways to go to deserve any higher rating. But that is it from me, and I am curious to hear what you guys think about the game in the comments. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace out.